had always savored the December atmosphere in her hometown. Twinkling lights illuminated every storefront, and the faint ring of sleigh bells drifted from the old speaker system on Main Street. More than anything, she looked forward to the aromas pouring out of the local bakery: cinnamon, caramel, fresh ginger. Each holiday season she found herself pausing at the large display window just to inhale. This year, however, felt different. There was no clear reason for the restlessness in her chest, no immediate explanation for her uneasy mood. Yet she couldn't shake the sense that something was askew. Still, the bakery's warmth beckoned to her on a snowy afternoon. Christmas was only a week away, and the sign outside cheerily proclaimed, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." A gust of cold wind ruffled the scarf around her neck, and she decided to step inside for a quick cup of tea before heading to work. The small bell over the door tinkled as she entered. Inside, the shop was cozy as ever, awash in golden light. The heady scent of pastries reached out in welcome, but there was another odor intermingling with the usual sweetness, something faint and slightly metallic. Emily couldn't place it, but she found her eyes drawn to a single cookie on display, nestled among the powdered sugar snowmen and candy cane twists. Shaped like a snowflake, it gleamed under the overhead lamp, its surface reflecting a dull sheen. She found herself leaning closer. Was it made of real metal? She had never seen anything like it. Before she could ask the baker about this odd pastry, the door swung open behind her, letting in a blast of frigid air. A woman stepped in, wearing a wool coat and looking peculiarly familiar. Emily glanced at her, trying to place where they might have met. Something in the woman's gaze felt oddly intimate, as though they shared a secret. The woman exchanged a brief, knowing nod with the baker, then approached Emily with purposeful steps. "I have something for you," the stranger murmured, pressing a small piece of paper into Emily's hand. Then she simply walked back out into the swirling snow. Emily stood there for a moment, stunned by the abrupt encounter. Her heart thudded as she opened the note. It contained only a single sentence, in neat handwriting: "Your past is waiting." The words lodged in Emily's thoughts. Past? Memories churned in half-remembered fragments, things she had carefully compartmentalized through years of living an ordinary life. She tried to focus, but all that surfaced was a quicksilver flash of something intangible. Confusion warred with a dawning anxiety. Had she met this woman before? Something in the voice reminded her of hushed conversations, flickers of old shadows. But the recollection remained just out of reach. "Emily, dear," came the baker's voice. She turned toward the counter and found the baker's eyes tracing her figure with an unsettling attentiveness. "I was about to brew some tea. Care to join me?" Emily swallowed. There was nothing overtly threatening in the invitation. Still, her skin prickled. It was the same feeling she got when she used to do something dangerous as a teenager. There, but intangible. Not wanting to be rude, she nodded and took a seat near the counter. The bakery seemed strangely silent, as though the usual chatter and whir of machines had muted into a low buzz. Moments later, a jarring crash came from the back room. She lurched upright, knocking the wooden stool with her knee. Flour dust drifted from the countertop, scattering her thoughts. The baker's gaze flicked to the rear door, then to Emily. For an instant, the expression on her face revealed more than mere surprise. Resolve mingled with fear, and her lips parted in a single whispered word. "Run." Emily froze, uncertain if she had heard correctly. The chill in the air made her shoulders tense. That sense of uncanny disturbance intensified. She turned to leave, but her gaze locked onto the metallic cookie again. A faint glow pulsed at its center, like some tiny heartbeat. Against every instinct screaming at her to walk away, she reached out, fingers hovering inches from the cookie's surface. The pulsing brightened, intensifying with each fractional movement of her hand. As soon as her fingertips brushed the cookie, light flared through the bakery, blotting out the holiday decor and the warm flicker of the display lights. A cacophony of shattered glass and muffled screams filled her ears, and then everything went white. When her vision cleared, she wasn't in the bakery anymore. Instead, she stood in a cavernous room lined with towering servers and blinking panels. The taste of electricity lingered in the back of her throat, and the tiled floor felt harsh underfoot. In the distance, someone cleared her throat. Emily turned to see a woman emerging from the shadows. Someone who could have been her reflection under harsher lighting. Same height, same shape of the face, but a hardened countenance that Emily didn't recognize. "Nova," said the stranger. "It's time you remembered who you are." Emily tried to speak, but her voice felt stuck. Her hands clenched at her sides in confusion. "You've been off the grid for 10 years," the woman continued, stepping closer. "That bakery was your final safe haven. The cookie was a memory. Trigger. We've waited a decade to reawaken you. The world needs you." The words tumbled through Emily's mind. "Nova?" she repeated, voice cracking. She thought of the note. Your past is waiting. Everything was colliding. Visions she couldn't explain. A flurry of bizarre images flooded her senses. Clandestine. Meetings, a sleek handgun resting in her palm, coded messages that only she could decipher. She fell back against one of the humming servers, breath coming in short bursts. The other woman placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. "This must be overwhelming," she said softly. "We were partners once, you and I. You were the best covert operative in the agency, codename Nova. Then you vanished. We discovered you had your memories wiped to protect yourself and them from the same group that built this place. They've been controlling you since you disappeared." Emily opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She needed answers, though she couldn't formulate the right questions. Her entire body trembled with the weight of new truths. The woman glanced around, then whispered, "We don't have time. They'll track us soon. Follow me." Before Emily could react, a tall figure stepped out from behind a bank of monitors. He wore a casual smile and introduced himself as Max, gesturing politely as though greeting old friends. "You look like you need a moment," he said, aiming his warm gaze at Emily. "I can help you." The woman who had called Emily Nova stiffened at once. She seemed on the verge of speaking, but hesitated. Max patted a small console beside him. "There's a safe way out through the sub-level. Let me show you." He offered a disarming grin. Even in her state of confusion, Emily found it oddly comforting. "I guess," she stammered, taking a step forward. The other woman looked wary, but Max's easy manner seemed genuine. He directed Emily down a narrow corridor that led to a back exit. Once outside, she realized with a jolt that they were no longer in her quaint little town. The towering buildings around them were unfamiliar, windows tinted dark beneath a colorless sky. A swirl of winter air stung her cheeks. The city seemed foreign, light years away from the holiday atmosphere on Main Street. Max steered her through an alley, explaining that he knew a discreet cafe nearby. The words felt scripted, but Emily found herself following anyway. She needed some normalcy, a place to breathe and think. They arrived at a nondescript establishment with a single flickering neon sign in the window. Inside, the heat provided some relief from the biting wind. A single barista stood behind the counter, flipping cups in a half-distracted pattern. They settled at a corner table. Emily's senses still danced between confusion and familiarity. Could she have really been a spy? Memories lurked at the corners of her mind, flashes that ignited random pangs of recognition. In one instant, she saw herself in a sleek black outfit, rappelling off a building. In the next, she was stirring cream into her morning coffee like any ordinary person. As she sipped her drink, she realized Max was studying her. He hadn't touched his mug. The warmth of the cafe couldn't entirely veil the intensity of his stare. "What exactly do you know about me?" she asked, setting her cup down. He leaned forward. "I know you were a top operative. I know you performed tasks we can only begin to imagine. And I know that, after your last mission, you decided to vanish. Someone in my organization found you and orchestrated the memory wipe. They installed you in that little town with a fabricated backstory. The bakery was part of it, a psychological apparatus we were monitoring. We needed to ensure you'd never recall who you really were. Emily's hands tightened around her mug. Why? He gave a short, breathy laugh. Because you were dangerous. Her? Pulse fluttered. And this entire experiment, the bakery, my neighbors, my supposed job, was it all constructed? His silence was telling. Only the faint hissing from the espresso machine broke the quiet. At last, he said, We needed to keep you docile. We made sure you had no recollection of your skills or your past. That was the plan. She swallowed hard. But that woman called me Nova. She acted like she was trying to help me. If your organization put me in that bakery to keep me controlled, who was she? Max's smile remained fixed, though his voice hardened. An obstacle. Part of a rebel faction that believes your abilities could turn the tide in a very big conflict. They've been searching for you. They found a way to place that memory trigger in the display case. The rest, as they say, is history. Every piece fell into place like a puzzle completing itself in her mind. Except the finished image looked nothing like the life she had known. Her first Christmas alone after leaving her hometown had always seemed like a fresh start. But evidently, that memory was false. She rubbed her forehead, trying to stave off the mounting headache. Max angled his head, eyes sharper now. You seem calmer than I expected, he said. I wasn't expecting that, she responded, voice faint. But here we are. His smile waned. Yes, here we are. And now that you understand, we can bring you back under our wing. We can ensure your skills remain beneficial to the right people. She registered the phrasing, beneficial to the right people, and exhaled with dawning realization. He wasn't looking to help her. He was looking to control her again. The kindly mask he wore barely concealed his intention. Do I have a choice? She asked. His reply came without hesitation. We all like to think we do, but in reality, there's only one path, and that path leads back to us. She glanced at the door, half expecting the other woman to burst in with a rescue plan. But the corridor outside the cafe was empty and still, save for the hush of wind passing by. Something inside Emily, perhaps that dormant part of her that had been a spy, stirred. It told her that only she could save herself now. You mentioned the bakery was a front, she said slowly. A huge psychological experiment? On me? Yes, he replied with disconcerting composure. We had to see how you'd adapt to memory suppression, whether small triggers would awaken hidden knowledge. Over time, we introduced subtle clues, a voice here, a fleeting fragrance there, to see if you would suspect anything. That's why the woman you remember from the bakery felt familiar. She was part of the team. You've been an unwitting participant in our project for a decade. Emily's heartbeat quickened. Her mind raced through the countless nights she had spent in that town, laughing with neighbors, strolling through the park, believing everything was real. She recalled the special holiday traditions, the songs, on the radio, the morning routine on her way to work. All of it carefully designed illusions. Max leaned in. You're a marvel, truly. The most promising test subject we've ever had. And now that the experiment is nearly complete, we can move forward with the next phase. You'll finally join our cause. She set her jaw. What if I refuse? He regarded her calmly, though his hand twitched near his pocket. You won't. Deep down, you know your memories of normal life were false. This place we took you to, these illusions, they provided some sense of happiness, I admit. But it was never real. The only real path for you is to remain with us. In that moment, Emily's mind flashed to the holidays that had once filled her with warmth. Despite everything, she had treasured those fleeting joys. The smell of gingerbread, the music drifting through the crisp winter air. Those had felt real enough, illusions or not. A wave of sorrow and anger filled her, and she recognized something stirring inside, an instinct for survival that had lain dormant for a decade. She met Max's gaze. "Show me where to sign up," she said, forcing a polite half-smile. He seemed pleased, lowering his guard ever so slightly. "It's for the best," he assured, leaning back in his chair. "We'll get you reacquainted with your training. You can come to terms with everything once you're back in a controlled environment. It may take time, but you'll adapt." Emily gave a short nod. She watched as he pulled out a sleek phone, prepared to call for transport. She could sense the directions her instincts offered. The door behind him was unguarded, the barista was conveniently distracted, and the route to the exit was unimpeded. She listened to every subtle shift in his posture, waiting. As Max finished dialing, she rose from her seat. He didn't react at first, but then he took note of the look on her face. His brow furrowed slightly. "Something wrong?" he asked. She stepped closer, placing a hand on the table. Their eyes locked. Under her breath, she uttered one word: "Reboot." His smile faltered. She watched recognition dawn on his features. Too late.